Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I'd like to tell you all about Shin Godzilla, or Godzilla Resurgence, or whatever the hell you want to call Toho's new Godzilla movie that I just saw in its American premiere. What do I think of this movie, this reboot of Godzilla? I think it's pretty damn good, but there are some problems that I had with it. Remember in my Loudmouth review of Godzilla Final Wars, which was before this one, the most recent Toho Godzilla movie, a couple times I complained that Final Wars throws weird shit at the audience but then doesn't explain what's going on. This movie doesn't have that problem. Toho really seems to have taken that criticism to heart, because this movie explains everything in meticulous detail. The vast majority of this movie, you don't see Godzilla. It's mostly people in boardrooms discussing Godzilla, and they go in all these details about what weapons they're using against him, how they work, how Godzilla's metabolism works, how his powers work, what's his body temperature. Pretty much, it feels like you're rating homework, basically. Like, you need to take down notes about everything this movie throws at you, which is kind of a tough thing to do, because I don't speak Japanese, and obviously everything was in Japanese and subtitled, and you're having all this thrown at you. Like, I saw this lady come with like a 5-year-old into the theater, and I personally wouldn't recommend taking kids to see this movie. And it's not because this movie is overly violent. There's destruction, but there's no like blood or gore or anything. There's no sexual themes of any kind. The American Godzilla was way more sexual in that regard, and it was still very mild in that regard as well. But just because throughout most of this movie's runtime, I imagine unless you're really able to keep track of everything these characters are saying, you're going to be bored, because Godzilla ain't there. When Godzilla is there, it's cool in this movie. This is a totally new version of the character. What I really liked about this movie is it understood that a character that's this old and it has been done on screen so many times, it was about time that this movie really try something different with the character. Well, basically more with the concept than with the character. If anything, the Hollywood Godzilla from a couple years ago was closer to the classic General Toho Godzilla than this movie was. Gives him new abilities that you really don't expect, and you're just kind of like, whoa, what? Didn't know he could do that. and it's pretty cool. And the scenes of him causing destruction, they're mostly done in the computer in this movie. There's no guy in a rubber suit in this movie, and I'm guessing that we're never ever going to see that again, because even Toho, who obviously made this movie on a budget much lower than the Hollywood one did, still saw CGI as the way to go. So some people don't like it, some people have a nostalgic attachment to the way movies used to be made, but it's the future, and them doing it mostly in computer really gave this Godzilla more freedom. You can do things like move his head in ways that the old suit actor couldn't do. All right, and you can have all these different forms and evolve, and it's all very interesting. When I first saw the previews of this movie, particularly when I saw Godzilla's new design, which is by far the ugliest looking Godzilla ever, I was kind of thinking this movie would be more like a horror movie. All right, and that's kind of what I was looking forward to in the lead up to this, but that's not really the movie we got. I mean, there's some scenes that are kind of scary, you know, when the monster's overhead leveling things, but I wouldn't say this movie really played up the horror of this monster's destruction as much as it could have to give it as much dramatic weight. A lot of this movie was basically a political satire, essentially, and that probably is something that's going to be lost on particularly someone like me, an American who's never been to Japan, who is totally unaware of Japanese politics. A lot of that may have been lost on me. There's said that there's a kind of a pseudo-nationalism to this movie, and kind of see that, basically, how all these foreign powers have their own ways of dealing with Godzilla, but no, Japan's going to solve it themselves because we can do it. We're a proud nation. So there's a good nationalism, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Japanese citizens being proud of their country any more than American or British or any other citizens being proud of their country. So the movie kind of having that inborn patriotism to it. Even as somebody who's not from that country, I can appreciate that sentiment. And I don't think it was anti-American or anything. It didn't portray the Americans as evil or bullyish. I mean, it portrayed them as basically people who really thought they had the solution. It just was the wrong one. One thing that's a big negative in this movie that was done badly is there's this one woman who plays the American ambassador there, played by a very beautiful Japanese actress, but she is amazingly unconvincing as an American. She speaks English in a couple scenes, and it just sounds terrible. You can so tell that this woman probably has never had a conversation in English in her life. Would it really have been that hard for Toho to cast someone to play an American, pick somebody who's fluent in English, who sounds American? I guess they figured the average Japanese moviegoer wouldn't give a shit, so who am I to know? And I'm not going to give away the ending of this movie, so there's no major spoilers in that regard. I'm not going to drop any, but it's really messed up. It's you leave the movie kind of with what the I'm guessing that's some kind of setup for a sequel, but honestly, I didn't understand it at all. Or maybe someone can explain it to me, but I didn't get it. I'm like, okay, what the hell? So with this movie, you get a good Toho Godzilla flick with this. I'm not going to say it's their best Godzilla movie, as some said. I heard people praising it as a masterpiece. I really wouldn't go that far. All right, there are definitely ones they made, but it's definitely would be in their top 10 Godzilla movies for sure, period. And probably the best at least the best since Godzilla vs. Destroya back in 95. So the best Toho Godzilla movie in 20 years. If you're a fan of Godzilla, if you really know what to expect from these Japanese Godzilla movies, yeah, I definitely recommend for you going to watch this. If you're more of the general moviegoer, I can kind of see you getting bored or confused with this movie. So, alright, the average American, I mean, since obviously it is very much a Japanese movie. It very much is catered to a Japanese audience. How much it appeals to the Western side of things was probably a secondary concern for Toho. If you know what to expect from a Toho Godzilla flick, I think you will like this movie. Good thing that Toho gave us a new Godzilla movie with Legendary taking so long to put out their sequel that they're supposedly making, coming out in a couple of years. They got the crossover with King Kong and everything, and all that's cool. But I'm glad that Toho gave us this movie so that we don't have to wait too long to see Godzilla on the big screen again. Good She-Ronk to everybody, and everyone have a great October. Bye.